Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Stacy Joy, and I am in Southern California. Today is October 31st, 2020, and I'm interviewing Susie Morice from St. Louis, Missouri, for the oral history project titled COVID-19 Teacher Poets Writing to Bridge the Distance, which will be archived by the Oklahoma State University Oral History Research Program. Hello, Susie.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Susie Morice, and I'm an educator. I spent 30 years in the classroom in the St. Louis area. And since then, I'm a retired teacher now, but since being in the classroom, I've spent 18 years working with administrators and teachers in the area of transformational school leadership. And that has kept me connected with teachers and classrooms all along the way. So here I am.
Wow.
20. So
tell me about how you became an educator.
I came from a family that didn't have that opportunity. My mom and dad, they were born in 1913 and 1914. They lived through the 1918 pandemic. And they both, during the Depression, were sent to work. And so they didn't get that opportunity. And so in my family, education has made all the difference in climbing out of that, because that left us in dire poverty for years and years. My parents didn't recover from the Depression. So I was raised on a farm, and school was everything to me. I mean, everything. Getting on the bus was a big deal. I mean, it's always been my life. It really has.
That's beautiful. So what were some of your roles in education? I know you're retired, so what were some of those roles you've had?
I taught middle school more than anything else. And I think 13-year-old kids are just absolutely marvelous little boogers. They are fun, and they look to school because they're in a transition spot in 7th grade. They look to teachers in a way that makes it a particularly wonderful experience. They need teachers because they're trying to shed parents. so it's a great place for them to go, because we're a guidance for them that way, both academically as well as socially and emotionally. So most of my time was spent there, but I taught high school for a long time. I taught college for off and on for many years. Teaching teachers how to teach writing was my thing. So that was fun. And then in the work that I have done with working with administrators, it really has been a remarkable experience of using my writing to help administrators understand how to make transformational change in their schools. So I do a lot of that kind of official kind of writing, going to schools all across the country and interviewing teachers and administrators who have it all together, who really know what it means to treat students with empathy and compassion. And that's been a marvelous way to spend the last 18 years. It's really been terrific.
So we're here to document the impact of COVID-19 on educators and education. Yes. Educators and education. So going back to the spring of 2020, how did you learn that teachers in your state would be teaching remotely, or that the school buildings would be closing?
It came to me sort of like in a very personal, thunderous kind of way. I have family out in Seattle, and COVID hit out there hard, real hard. And so my radar was up, and I started reading a lot about it the second that it hit the United States. It unfolded here extremely rapidly in St. Louis. A family had been traveling in Italy And they came back, and we're talking about a family of high privilege, came back, didn't pay any attention to what our county executive said. They needed to be quarantined. They were positive when they came in the country. He told them to quarantine. They didn't do it. They held a super spreader party, went to one. They didn't hold it. They went to one. And all hell broke loose after that. It just came like holy thunder in this metropolitan region. And because of that, in my being an educator, my radar was all over the place about this. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the asymptomatic nature of it scared me to death, because I wasn't going to know when it was sneaking up on me. And it happened that all of this, it was like holy thunder in March. And my niece on the West Coast, she's in Portland. She's my daughter. And she got really sick. It comes with silent feet. It truly does. Her husband had been on a business trip, came back having flown home, happy as a clam. Hello, honey. She fell sick immediately, and she didn't know what hit her. And it scared me so bad, because then they started coughing up the symptoms of COVID and on the news. And it was like, holy crap, is this what you've got? I mean, it really scared my family to death and scared her to death. And there were no tests in Portland at that point. She couldn't even find out what was wrong. So she did end up in the ER, and she did come out okay, and it's all right, and everybody's fine. But that kind of radar was right there. And when everybody was saying, here, things are going to change real quickly, the first thing that comes to my mind now is that as soon as children can't, they have to be at home, then what happens? It's the consequences, the unintended consequences of one thing leading to the next. And my neighbor across the street is a teacher. 2 doors down, I have a neighbor who is a healthcare worker who gives COVID tests all day and has since March, all day, every day. She just gives the tests. And it's like, oh my gosh, these are people who are in harm's way. And so talking to my neighbors right away brought it home again, how chaotic this was, and the chaos of it. Especially my classroom teacher friend across the street, she's like, oh my gosh. She goes, I'm teaching online. I'm not teaching online. I'm not. I'm teaching both. And it was like, oh, holy cow. So that just floored me. So when we started on April 1st to write, I had things to say.
So yes, exactly. At that time, that buildings were closing and we were being asked to shelter in place. It was also the beginning of National Poetry Month.
Yes.
So you, along with other educators, participated in writing a poem a day. Can you talk a little bit about writing poetry during a pandemic?
Oh gosh. If I had not had Ethical ELA's writing poetry every day, I'm not sure how, in the chaos of the news, I would have been able to focus properly. It helped me to be able to articulate how important all of this was in a way that would be useful. And that community presented itself. And I was like, oh my goodness, because the nature of writing poetry and responding to poetry in this format is one of careful respect, careful choice of words, and heartfelt respect that you're walking in the other person's shoes. And so it came at the right moment. It really did. And it continues. And it only because that community understands, because they want to understand. They're open-minded. We are not all like-minded people by a long shot, but we are like-minded about being respectful and about finding how the words say something that is the universal human experience. And I think that really matters.
Mm.
So,
can you share a poem that you wrote in the early days?
Yeah, that at the beginning, and this, oddly, I wrote a lot of poems about this, but this one I wrote on the first day. So, and this was 2 weeks in for me. March 15th was my shutdown day.
Okay.
My cousins left town. We hugged. It was the last time I have touched another human being in how many months is this? That 9 months, 8 months? So this came then. And this took me to my niece, having contracted because of the asymptomatic nature of COVID, that it sneaks up on you. And so I took this with some personification. I took it to that level. So this is called I Am COVID. I think the prompt for this had been to write a credo, to write something I believe kind of thing. And I thought, I'm going to be COVID for a few minutes here and be COVID. So I am COVID. I came on silent feet, slipped underneath your door, lay lazy on the floor, waiting. You soaped your hands, mopped and scrubbed it down the drain, or so you thought, to stave the strain, my novel presence there. Yet weaseled in the corners, I scratched and clawed, brazen, thirsting for a flaw, I hung and ripped inside your lungs, infected, knotted, left your song unsung. Finished you, I slithered on. In years to come, they'll mark my day and build a wall, carve all your names on miles of marble. A pall will fall across the land, a marker left, the COVID wall. If you've been to Washington, D.C., and you've seen all those beautiful white statues and marble this and marble that, the thing that stands out to me in Washington is the Vietnam Wall. And all those names looking back at you because it reflects. And I thought, by golly, what a grim thing to think that we could have a COVID wall. But there are so many, it would be tragic. It's really terrible.
Right.
I think this morning's count is 230,000 brothers, sisters, moms, dads, uncles are dead. That's pretty horrible to me. Whew, not pretty. It's just ghastly.
Right. So as you read this now, how do you feel? What do you notice about your emotions?
That I felt that strongly on April 1st, and this is 9 months later, and it's not any different. It's worse. It just keeps on coming. In fact, I pulled up this morning's newspaper headline is, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes. Really alarming.
That's the front page of the Post-Dispatch, because our numbers are so horrible now that the exponential nature of all of this demands for there to be a unified voice in this country. And that voice, we're not hearing that unity, but in our community, there is a sense of unity around how ghastly all of this really is. So that helps.
Right. So COVID-19 impacted schools and states in different ways, clearly, like you're sharing now. How do you feel like your state or the schools in your state responded?
Our state has some wonderful schools and some pitiful leadership. And it's the leadership I thought would do better. So it's been left in the hands of people scrambling who no one person is showing anybody the light of a way that we could be unified in mitigating awful reactions to everything. So it's been hard. In my specific area, St. Louis, I'm in St. Louis County, right on the city-county line. So we see a lot of what happens in the city happens right where I am as well.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of trying to hold hands and do this together that's happening. But you step outside of this metropolitan region and oh, holy mackerel, it is not happening. It is really not happening. And it's just scary because they don't have the hospitals. You get sick right outside the county lines and they come into the city because, my God, we've got hospitals. We've got oodles of them in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. However, it's made schools scramble. Kids who go home to folks who have to work on the front lines. Right. Teachers are front line all the way down the line. And how in the world do they handle that? When their kids are at home and they have to be doing online they don't even in teachers who've got all kinds of tech in their houses don't have enough to have taught their kids on tech while they're teaching on tech. So it's like, oh, holy cow, this is not working very well. Mm-hmm. So it has created a scramble and a sense of chaotic stuff. However, the interesting part to me is how devoted the teachers are to doing it. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm not sure I would have the mettle to not just lose my marbles doing this, but they're tough and they're working really, really hard in the name of kids, and they're trying to stay healthy. So it's hard. Ooh, it's really hard.
So do you feel like any of the issues that you're speaking of have impacted your poetry writing in the spring or now, either explicitly or implicitly?
Yes. Poetry by its nature we mentioned this a little bit earlier, it requires you to measure your words carefully and to hone down what you want to say so that it resonates with someone else. Mm-hmm. And I have taken it much more seriously since all of this happened. I don't know if that even makes any sense, but it is what I say, especially about school and learning, about kids and about teachers, needs to have an audience. And so I am grateful that there are folks out there who recognize that they should be archiving some of what teachers have to say about all of this. So yeah, I think it makes a big difference. It really does.
So would you like to share another poem?
Well, let me say one of the things that COVID has done that I think is pretty tough is that it's ripped the scab off of so many things to reveal that we have got so much work to do. COVID has made it clear to me that there are some folks who have been determined negotiable, maybe disposable, that we can talk about 230,000 as a number, but we're not talking about their names. It is painful to me because those are real people. And so by ripping off that scab, I think we've unloosed the whole who gets thrown under the bus. And people of color in my community have gotten thrown under the bus in my book. I mean, they really have. The north side of St. Louis, which has few resources compared to a lot of other spots in the country, that's really pretty cruel. Who has the tough jobs where they work with the public all day long? Who are those people? Those are folks who don't have as much. And so I can stay in my house and stay okay. Kids are grown and I'm okay. They're not okay. And I'm just, one person. There are oodles of people who are really struggling. So when Black Lives Matter St. Louis was suffering to start with because of Michael Brown. And well, because it's been a racist city to start with for years and years and years, we've had problems here. It's been the Jefferson Bank book thing. The Jefferson Bank case in St. Louis didn't give loans to Black people. That's horrible. I mean, that's a national shame. And we stand out because of that. Wahoo. So those kinds of things have been going on for decades, and we haven't fixed them. And so that we haven't rectified the wrongs that are done. And when you have things happen like the Black Lives Matter movement, that's now has become a movement, those things are just exacerbated because we now recognize how many things are screwed up in this country. And it's just COVID just lifted back the veil that was over so many things. So I wrote this one. I'm blathering on. I'm sorry. I wrote this one called Cocktail Hour. Now, this is kind of goofy. The prompt that day was write about food. Really?
Cocktail hour.
So my mind went straight to cocktails. No, it did a couple things. It made me think about how angry I was. I was not in a poetry writing mood that day, really. I was really angry about so many things that seemed to be going wrong with the lack of leadership and how it seemed almost criminal to me. And I kept visualizing the old Macbeth, the old cauldron. So I got a little carried away on this poem, but I thought it says kind of what I was thinking. So Cocktail Hour. I need an elixir, a potion, a witch's brew to get me through 2020 since lockdown started for me March 15th. A salving cocktail, if you will, could maybe numb the hurt of 200,000 and counting, erased from the country. A cocktail to salve the scary fears my friends endured, their fevers, coughing, pneumonias, ventilators, quarantines away from their loved ones. A cocktail to assuage my teacher friends at wit's end on a roller coaster of administrative indecision. Just teach online. Virtual, too euphemistic, far too benign. No wait, in person. No wait, online. No wait, hybrid. No wait, both. 2 full-time jobs with parents at wit's end hammering their email keyboards morning to night, demanding answers teachers don't have. A cocktail that calms kids' confusion while adults around them play out domestic drama, voices muzzled, ignored day after day. A cocktail that hushes the deniers, those ill-informed, head up their ass, anti-logic, anti-mask, anti-sanity spewers, hoax-mongers of breathtaking ignorance. A cocktail to set at my feet where my beloved old Wadi used to lie to get me through that silence. A cocktail that grants me sleep. As with the Shakespeare hags with their cauldron brewing cocktail, there go I. Round about the cauldron go in the poisoned entrails of POTUS I'd throw. Toad, his henchman, Rudy ominous, I'd pull from under cold stone. Boil thou in the charmed pot. Double, double, this toil's no trouble. Fire 'em up and burn, let the cauldron bubble. Fillet of finny snake, toss in a pence, not worth a shilling. In cauldron boil and bake. Eye of Mitch and toe of Frog Miller shill, Ruschian wool of Jared or Malonia, tongue salivating swill, adder's fork bar, no truth, and blind worm's sting, lizard's leggy Kelly Con and vulture's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil 'em till they bubble. Double, double, this toil's no trouble. Fire 'em up and burn, let the cauldron bubble. The hangover would be worth it. I was angry. it's just,
Wow.
I got a little riled up.
Like, what do you notice now, feeling the feelings again?
it's the power of putting words down that makes the difference. That if you can put those words down, and then it becomes a discourse with which you can have good conversation with your peers who will read this with you. So posting that and the community of response, I mean, I get pretty one-sided on this. It was okay. I got a lot of positive feedback about how important it is to put your words down. I just think that it's a way to carry a message in a civilized way. It's more than blathering on social media. I mean, a person can do that. It's very addictive to just blather on and facelessly just, have people snark out their meme responses. We could all do that with the best of them, I'm sure. I mean, we're writers, but that's not the best way to do things. It really isn't. And I think that this community has given an opportunity for us to hone our craft at civil discourse. So it might be pretty harsh, but it's still civil discourse for me. So
wow. Some states, we'll move into looking at how it changed throughout the end of the school year and moving on. So some states continue distance learning until the end of the school year, 2020. And I'm sure you've been in communication with other educators who had to end their year in remote teaching. So would you talk a little bit about like writing now and how connecting to other teachers through writing has looked for you, and then what it means to have that sacred space, like you were speaking of with our writing community?
Yeah. I think writing gives you a frame for conversation. If you think about even how this is going, I mean, I have poems. They're written down. They're my thoughts that were compiled at the time they were written. And it gives an opportunity for us as a community then to have a conversation. It's what you do as a teacher. You're looking at a book, you're looking at an article, you're looking at a piece out of a textbook perhaps, but it gives you a way to talk about things that are complex and hard decisions, hard choices about what's fair, what's not fair. And it's through that kind of education that we can create a community where people listen to each other, and maybe hear what the other side had to say. And one thing about the poems that we were creating and still are creating carry story with them. And the story of it is, I think that's where the heart comes. I mean, you can see that a person feels something about a particular thing at a particular time, and you learn their story, why it mattered to them. But if somebody were to freeze me in place and say, this is who you're going to be for the rest of your life, I would say, no. I would say no, because my words get to change. I get to write new pieces because I'm in new places all the time. And so place becomes important in my writing. And it's like I have to do that, because through that is how I keep growing and sharing and surprising myself and surprising the folks around me, because they get to do those shifting and changings with me. And if I thought things were going to stay exactly the way they are, good grief. I mean, I don't look to the back and say, okay, I want it to be like it used to be. I don't look at even right now. I don't want it to stay the way it is. I want to be able to use what's been there, use what is, and then get things rolling to be better all the time. Because I always think there's room for us to shift in more positive ways.
Right.
So that's what it does for me. It says, okay, keep on doing this, because this is making you a better person.
Wow. So I would actually was planning to ask, like, do you see the silver lining in all this? And was there like an aha moment from this?
Um, I don't know that it's an aha so much as that it's a sense that it's been disruption, that through what is so wrong. I mean, I hate what's happening. I really do. I mean, it just scares me so bad to see a country so torn inside out. But you don't get to that other side unless you have disruption. And so I think that's what we've got. And so I have a poem about that. So is it okay if I read that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So this one, this is kind of again, the prompts are funny. You think the prompts are going to take you to one place. We had a prompt on a day that said, let's write about the weather. Oh, la, la, clouds, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what I wrote about. When I think about weather, the first thing that came to my mind was climate. What kind of a climate is going on here? Mm-hmm. And I thought about the climate of the country, and boy, does the climate of the country ever stink right now. I mean, it just, holy cow. Mm-hmm. But then I was thinking also about the disruption of it. And so, because the first 12 years of my life, I was on a farm in the middle of nowhere, I thought about the weather vane, on the barn kind of thing. So anyway, I tied all that stuff together. So this is not to be weathered. The vane on the barn swings slowly, almost imperceptibly, back and forth, prevailing westerlies mostly. We stare passively at the old cock, don't mind his cautions, keep doing what we're doing, till the stiff old rooster takes a full spin. Disruption. America sucks in, a gasp, aghast, counts, 8 minutes. We can't breathe. Our faces in the dirt of racism. Too hard to look away. Veins open, bloodletting, draining the foul soul from the infected body of America, while the rooster continues to whirl on its axis, crowing to count and shout the names, machete the systems of cruelty, let away the blood of aggression, of hate, the oozing vessels of injustice. Not a storm to be weathered. This is a trading of the winds, a quantum rethinking metamorphosis of a cleaving country. And the rooster, hoarse from his gasconades, has finally brought us to woke. I didn't think that would still stick in my head so bad. Whoa.
Yeah. Your heart is on the page.
I have to. How many more of those moments do we have to suck down before the disruption is enough to change it all? I've not ever been somebody who said this came from above. Mm-hmm. But by God, COVID unleashed some real realizations for us. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm glad for that, but I'm horrified by how hard it is.
Right.
I really am.
Right. Okay, Susie, let's move into thinking about, if we can, some of the benefits of COVID-19 and understanding literacy teaching and learning for teachers and students, regardless of equity, access, emotional well-being, teacher communities. Let's move into that.
Yeah. Well, I think for sure we have work to do.
Yeah.
The inequities are, holy cow. just the whole, for a kid to be home alone that's just uncalled for. I mean, it's just not right. And having access to that, and a lot of times, when you see people act in ways that are ignorant, that are ill, and I mean ignorant in that unstudied, where they don't make good choices and stuff like that. As much as that you can say, oh yeah, they weren't raised right. Well, we've got them for 12 years, 13 years, count kindergarten. We've got them for all those years to try to make a dent in that. And it's a huge responsibility that I don't take lightly at all. And I don't think you're a teacher until the day you drop dead, once you've said I'm a teacher. And so my work is still here. I mean, it matters to me that kids have access to technology. It matters to me that kids have a place to focus, that when they go home, they can get done what they need to get done. And that somehow that I can be instrumental in some way, maybe helping that be better that way. So when I see how hard all this is, I also see that we can start knitting together a better community. So I want to do that. And I think that every teacher I know wants to do that. They want to get through to the other side of all of this, so that they can say, well, we got hammered in 2020 and we lost a tremendous number of people. May they not die in vain. May we be better because we have changed things. Mm-hmm. And I mean, change things racially. I mean, change things in our schools, in our homes. I don't know. We need to be a more compassionate, empathetic, and a better community. And as English teachers, I was an English teacher, language arts teacher. It's critical to me that I teach things like logic, problem solving and logic, that together as a community, we do those things together. You don't live in isolation. I don't just live to teach Macbeth. I don't just live to teach one particular thing. I mean, you teach people how to be better people. And so I want to be able to continue to support that. I support that with my neighbor across the way. We talk all the time. He said, what can I get you? Are there some poems? And I put her in touch, and she actually, I forgot, she's actually writing poetry too with her kids. So, so that's really working. And I'm still mentoring a young teacher. This is kind of funny. I'm mentoring a teacher who was one of my 7th graders a long time ago, who is now a teacher on an island in Maine. And
great.
And now she's writing poetry. I love that. And she's using this kind of community with her kids to help them be better people. And it is that whole business of teaching and showing through your actions the compassion and empathy. And when you have that and you share that, the kids see it. I mean, it's, they learn and they do what they watch you do, so we can have a huge impact. I mean, we're just sort of like little warriors in our little Zoom windows. Yes.
Love that. So let's talk a little bit about what you feel like are your most significant takeaways from this time. And then what's the strategic direction you think we should take in education?
Wow. One of the takeaways, and for me, it's a critical one, is that we don't gaslight what we've witnessed. We cannot pretend this didn't happen. We cannot pretend monkey with the numbers and say, oh, she died from pneumonia, not COVID. No, that's malarkey. Those are connected things. And I think that it's important that this become a piece of the history of who we are as educators, that we never get so glued to a textbook that we say that textbook is the sole holy grail of everything, that we have to broaden the text so that it is in a bigger context and they understand what was going on in the world down the road. So for the future, I think one of the things we have to do is preserve what is happening and honor it for what it is. And continue to always notice in our teaching the kid that's too quiet, the kid that is going home or isn't going home to a peaceful place. So we have a responsibility, I think, to do more than teach a subject. We have a responsibility to teach logic and to show by example compassion and empathy all throughout all content areas. We're going to stay siloed in content areas, I imagine, for a while. And eventually we'll understand that it is working together by the amalgam of those things that is going to help people be better problem solvers. And I think we have a huge responsibility to do that. I guess that's it.
Well, we've been talking for quite some time. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I didn't ask, or something else you would like to share? If you'd like to end with a poem, you may do that.
Yeah, I have a poem that I think speaks to the whole business of not forgetting, that of not letting this get brushed under the rug of our country. I think that it's important. It's called To Forget Never. I remember we held these truths to be self-evident, matters of fact. It was like this: certainty, bold and bent with conviction, declared, trusted that our house was built with stones of exacting might, treasured trusses of truth. I saw it with my own eyes, counted with my 10 fingers. Our house shifted, suddenly sagged, drafty, cleft in the corners, window panes smeared with a heavy impasto of doubt, a trompe-l'oeil, a sleight of hand, rendering a different truth, countering logic, papered in toxins, dripping pathogens down the wavering walls. Now, when I remember the text in my left hand, my other on my heart, the mere act of recollection carries a new weight, a sacred right, as if having been there, as if bearing witness, as if forgetting promises the house will crumble. I write to forget never.
Thank you, Susie.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Stacy.
That was amazing.
I hope folks who listen to our interviews learn some stuff.
I do too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We'll stop recording now.
Okay.